Hi, everyone. Welcome to Yammer, our session today about how to set up your network for success. My name is Emma Beatty. I'm a senior UX researcher at Yammer, and these are two of my colleagues, Luke Danziger and Taylor Burfield, who are both product managers on the team. And so we all work on the product team on Yammer. We work on all the features that you all use every day. And today we want to share with you some top ways that we've really learned how you can set your networks up for success. And that's because we've done a ton of research in this area, from doing experiments in the product to really see which features really help uptick the engagement in your networks, to interviewing hundreds of customers and end users throughout our careers. We really gathered a lot of insights that we want to share with you all. And actually, just this summer, we were traveling around Europe and interviewing some of our top European customers to really understand what works for them. And I wanted to just share with you just a few of the highlights that I thought were really interesting. So one thing that we learned was that users actually really love to see their leaders and their executives posting from mobile, which I thought was really interesting because they see that kind of posted from mobile message on their Yammer posts, and that they know that they were doing it on the go. It was authentic. It wasn't actually coming from a comms team. It was authentically them sharing a kind of a lightweight message on the go. What was also really interesting was that users also really notice and appreciate when those messages have typos, because that makes them seem human. It's a really nice way for leaders to actually seem authentic, is when they're not too worried about crafting the perfect message or running it by their admin to proofread it before they post it. So getting that authentic engagement. And the last thing that I saw that was really just interesting and funny was the popularity of selfies. This was another authentic way that leaders were engaging with all of their employees on Yammer. So if you're looking to kind of bump things up for a day, consider asking your leaders to take a selfie. But we wanted to talk to you all about a few other ways besides selfies that you can set your networks up for success. So the first most important thing that you should all do for your Yammer networks is really think about what you want to achieve with it. What is the goal that you have for rolling out Yammer? So this may seem like kind of an obvious thing, but too many times we see a lot of people just kind of flip the switch on Yammer and see which departments pick it up, who's going to adopt it, kind of experiment with it and play with it a little bit. And the thing with this is that's not really how Yammer works. Yammer is not a tool for reinforcing the silos of teams that already exist and just moving it to a different platform. It's about creating a network as a whole throughout your company, and it works best when everyone is there together. So what this really takes is having an intentional rollout. And so you can see in this graph here, this is one of our customers. They actually deployed Yammer here, and you can't see, but there's these few small bumps of just a couple hundred users that are kind of piloting it, experimenting with it. It's kind of taken hold in the sales department, but nowhere else. But it wasn't until they did this intentional launch that they saw their usage skyrocket up to 35,000 users. And so that's coming from the top down. That's an intentional rollout. So you should all be asking yourselves, what is the goal that we have for Yammer at our companies? So that could be anything from getting leaders to really engage with employees. It could be about sharing knowledge and best practices. It could be about improving inefficiencies in your company, or it could just be about reducing email overall. So depending on what that goal is, you also want to think about what are the concrete use cases, the really concrete ways that you can reinforce that in the product, in kind of daily behavior. So for example, if you're thinking about how your leaders can engage with employees more often, think about the things you're already doing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So think about if there's a monthly newsletter, moving that to Yammer, or asking your leaders to kind of post a weekly update of what they're working on, kind of demystify, what they're doing all day. Are they traveling? Are they speaking to customers? Are there things that are keeping them up at night? What are they thinking about? And so those are some lightweight ways for leaders to engage. If your goal is more around communities and knowledge and best practices, think about what are the different types of communities and topics there are at your company that you really want people to be sharing knowledge around, and create groups for them. So a few of our customers that are really successful with Yammer are consultancies, and so they have a lot of different verticals that they're working on. So it could be on energy or tax law. So they create groups that are specifically for those, and people can talk about best practices, find experts, and kind of answer each other's questions, share advice on how to tackle the problems that they're facing. You could also do things like creating a community for SharePoint administrators. So if you're rolling out Office 365 for the first time altogether, create groups for the other products for people to kind of come ask questions and find information. Or if you're interested in improving inefficiencies in your company, consider starting with a campaign. So you could do a hashtag, like hashtag room for improvement, and ask people to contribute different ways that they would want to see improvements in inefficiencies in the company. Or if you're just looking to reduce email and kind of move things out of people's inbox and kind of be more social, consider moving things like new hires or promotions or recognition of your colleagues to Yammer. And that'll kind of help make that conversation more social and less spammy. So it may be tempting to tackle all of these different things, because I imagine that these are all goals within your companies, but you might want to just focus on just 2 to 3 of these concrete use cases and do them really, really well. Because if you spread yourself too thin across all of these different goals, you're going to be exhausted, you're going to spread yourself too thin, and none of them will be actually done well. So really focus your efforts on your high-level goal, and then 2 to 3 use cases that are really going to drive that home to the rest of your company, and spend your energy there. So as you can see, it really does take a lot of key stakeholders, or what we call catalysts or catalyzers within your companies, to really make this happen. They're the ones that are kind of creating this plan, this very intentional purpose for Yammer. And so I think a lot of you in the audience today are probably those catalyzers within your companies. Let's see. And so we see this as a pattern, and all successful networks that we see have these catalyzers. It doesn't happen by accident. So we're investing even more into these catalyzers right now, because we see that all our customers really recognize that Yammer is not just an IT project. It is a human project. It's about creating change within your company. We also see that they recognize that they may have experimented and piloted Yammer in different pockets before, but they didn't really see that huge engagement until they really focused on their leadership connection use case, or using Yammer as a tool for feedback. And really using that, that's when they saw their huge success. So we're investing in these catalyzers more and more. You might have seen in Murali's roadmap session earlier today that we're launching things like pinned post, which will be coming in 2019, things like the SharePoint web part, things like a question and answer with the ability to mark the best answer, that'll really help catalyzers create these communities and do a great job of getting leaders on board and creating great communities. So that's why we're investing even more in these types of catalyzers. And I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Luke.
Thanks, Emma. So the second do that we have is really have an intentional plan and strategy around raising awareness for Yammer. What you don't want to do is kind of let the organic mechanisms take place and get a small trickle of people over a longer period of time. You want to try and get to that critical mass of people as soon as possible. And kind of the analogy we use internally is, if you're going to a meetup and you only see 2 to 10 people there, it's much less interesting, and the chance that you stay is very different than if you have 50 or 100 people. So that critical mass is a key component. Another tenet of that is pilot programs. A lot of people try and do small, very controlled pilots. The problem is Yammer's a network, and so it benefits when you get different people from different silos all on board at the same time, participating in that conversation. And so that's one other key element to be mindful of when you do a proactive adoption strategy. So what should you actually do? So there's 3 things we focus on. So one is, once you've established your goal, the purpose of the Yammer network, you need to make sure to communicate that out. First, obviously, to key stakeholders, make sure they're on board and they understand and can localize the information for people that are closer to them. But the second is making sure that everybody in the company kind of understands what the key value prop of Yammer is and how it pertains to them. So for the example of the Crisis Prevention Institute, they put this in the new employee handbook. And in the new employee handbook, they talked about how it would be a professional development network. That was the key use case that they were going for. And it was a place where you could share ideas, insights, and strategies that you personally use, and to learn from your colleagues. The second element is use multiple channels. So one channel is not necessarily going to be, sorry, right there? Okay. One channel is not necessarily going to be the right thing to reach all employees. So for headquarters, email might be much more prevalent. Whereas in frontline employees, they're not going to have access to email. And so using break room posters or newsletters, other things of that nature can help you get in front of those people. The third one is reinforce the message. Hearing it once is oftentimes not enough to let it sink in. In advertising, there's an old adage of the rule of 7. So someone needs to be exposed to a message 7 times before they fundamentally understand and the message sinks in. So the third element is around coaching people. Coaching your leaders, coach your stakeholders. You don't want to be in this alone. You want to establish a team and build a coalition that's helping make this network successful. And so there's a few key components to that. So one is, if without coaching, a lot of people have a sensible default. And that default oftentimes is to do nothing or to lean out. And so you really want people to lean in, leadership, other folks to lean into this communication mechanism, and giving them a few key tips and tricks is really, really helpful. Because these people can have a disproportionate impact on Yammer engagement and Yammer adoption. So for the example at YPro, basically as soon as employees saw that their contributions were recognized by senior leaders, their engagement skyrocketed. So these people have disproportionate leverage within the Yammer network, and so are extremely helpful in terms of catalyzing adoption. So in terms of things that are more concrete that leaders can do, so having them ask an open-ended question is really, really useful because it basically lowers the barrier for other people to participate and allows them to share their insights and their perspective with leadership and feel heard. The second one is not to just lob posts kind of into the group, but to really kind of look at what's currently going on within a group and engage more deeply with that content. Like content, reply to content, offer the leadership perspective or key stakeholder perspective from that. And the third one is to share weekly updates and thoughts, right? Make people feel connected to you. Help people understand where leaders are coming from. And all of that basically allows them to present their more authentic self and to connect with their employees in a more meaningful way. For key stakeholders, they're really the evangelist for the groups that they create, right? And so making sure that people know about these groups, can find these groups, can join these groups, that's a key component. And then also making sure that conversation velocity in these groups is high. So whether that's posing questions to the community to make sure that they're thinking about various relevant, pertinent topics to the group and getting them to engage that way, or connecting people across the network. So if someone's asking a question and they're not necessarily getting the right response, being a facilitator and help mention somebody, bring someone else into the conversation who you think can help them. Two other recommendations. So one is there's creating a group for all of the group admins. So group admins can help share their tips and tricks with one another so that they can help level each other's game up. And as Yammer rolls out new features, kind of talking about how they're applying those new features and what's going on there. And then the last point is we do have a lot more resources around leadership and how to engage with leadership at the AKA Admins link. We also have a bunch of these up here.
Okay, so once you've set your goal and you've thought about your marketing plan and you have your leaders on board, you need to start thinking about the users and employees who are actually going to come into this network. So our next do and don't is that it's really important to set up a few official groups and have them ready and somewhat filled out for when people first hit Yammer and start thinking about what is this tool, why do I use it, why am I even here? So what you really don't want to do, if you only have all company, people will post there because they don't know where else to post, which can create the problem of a lot of unnecessary noise in all company. Or posting to all company is pretty daunting. So a lot of people who might have been okay posting in a smaller group will not feel comfortable posting to Yammer. So what groups could you start seeding your network with? One great place to start is one for each office location. The people in the Orlando office can talk about what's going in there, or the people in the Southeast sales region can all share trends that they're seeing. You can also do it by function. The IT professionals across the whole globe can all talk about things in a specific area. But really by putting these few official groups that are ready for people to participate in, you can help users see when and how they're supposed to interact. One really interesting piece of information we see from looking at usage data, users who are in a network that has 6 or more groups are 3 times more likely to be retained than users in networks with either 0, meaning just all company, or just 1 or 2 additional groups. So really just a few key groups can go a long way and is worth investing in. So when you create these groups, So when you create these groups, if you just create a group and add no additional information, on the left is what you'll get. And you could imagine, okay, I'm going to create a group, and then the next thing I'm going to do is add all of the people I want to be in that group. But what happens then is everyone comes into this group, and it's pretty empty. It feels sort of like, what's happening here? And there's no clear call to action for the users. So really with a few key steps, you can turn what's on the left to what's on the right and really make it a more welcoming and actionable place for employees as they come in. So at the top, you can add a group description. So as people are searching for groups, like, should I even join this group? Is this a place I want to be? That really helps with that. And then in the right rail, you can fill out the group info with key people, key use cases, more information for them to know how to use the group. Also, if you're the group admin, make sure you have a picture so they feel like it's like really a person and this person's invested in this, a little social proof. And then seed your group with at least a few posts. Asking a question's a great thing because it makes it so people can just respond. Or some type of campaign, like share a best practice with this hashtag so everyone can learn. And that really helps people come in, have something actionable, and clearly decide, like, is this a group I want to join or not? And like, where and what do I share here? So our final of our top 5 do's and don'ts for launching your Yammer network is really just that launching Yammer is a process. So you don't want to just do one big email campaign, one big launch event, and walk away. You want to keep trying to drive engagement and monitor engagement. So why is this? This isn't true of all products. You can just turn email on and people will start using it. But this is an additional tool that people are not going to be used to using. So they need some time, one, to adjust to it. But they also need to see that it's long-term here to stay in your company. People are going to keep using it in order to make them even want to bother trying to get used to it. And then they also need to see a benefit. What is it that I get out of this? And that's really when you have groups with content and they can see what it is, really helps with that. So if you take a look at this graph, this is one of customer data from one of our customers who you can see the usage, and it's really been growing over time quite steadily. And there are some very large spikes where they actually have doubled their normal daily users. And what they're doing here is this is when their CEOs and top leaders are engaging. So if you guys were all at the roadmap session this morning, Morale and Steve were showing our live event scenario. So having a town hall on Yammer, getting everyone in the company to come in, or what we call Yam Jams. Basically a leader saying, Thursday at 1 p.m., I'm going to be in my CEO group answering questions for you. And users can go there and real-time interact with them. This can really bring a big boost to those specific days and also the days around it. And then it helps people know, like, oh yes, Yammer, that's what I go back to. Other than leader events, you can also run ongoing campaigns, like a quality improvement for engineering processes, or go green for your company. Something that's going on over a longer period of time that will help people remind them and go back over time. So those are our top do's and don'ts, but we have a ton more resources that the team has put together. We have some cards up here with a lot of these links as well. The big ones for adoption are under aka.ms/yam resources, so I really recommend you going there, and feel free to come up and grab cards at the end. And then also you can provide feedback to the product team directly. We monitor this at user voice, so do share your feedback about the product. We also want to highlight a few sessions that are going on. So there are a number of sessions by other people that work for Yammer like us, and I highly recommend you going to those. And then our partners and MVPs who have actually launched Yammer themselves firsthand at their companies also have a ton of sessions. So they're really a great resource, and both Yammer employees and MVPs are over at the booths if you have specific questions you want to talk about. And then, last but not least, we have our happy hour tonight. Yammer is 10 years old, so we're going to be celebrating that. You all should come, have some drinks with us, hang out with the Yammer team. So we'd love to see you all there. It's at 6:30, just up the road a little ways at Irabena. Thank you. We'll stay around for questions, and do please provide feedback on the link to our talk.
Thank you.